Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 250 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game. Are you ready to discover what your Knack for Business truly is? Your hosts are Bernie Franzgroter from Creative Insight and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc.
Today's topic is finding opportunity in chaos and recruitment. Adaptation stories. Question 2 and from the audience, how can I find and recruit the right leaders who will align with my company's vision and drive growth, even in challenging times? That's what our guest is all about, Allen Ackerman from A-List Search. Allen is a seasoned executive search professional with over 2 decades of experience helping companies recruit transformational leaders who drive growth, from growth stage disruptors like Bombas, WeWork, and Hinge to global giants such as Comcast, BCG, and the London Stock Exchange. Allen has built a reputation for delivering highly personalized service by immersing himself in his client's culture and mission. He becomes a trusted partner, crafting long-term collaborative relationships that often span multiple hires. Allen's notable achievements include building the marketing team for Jay-Z's Tidal before the acquisition by Square, assembling Comcast's executive suite for Freewheel, and working closely with WeWork's co-founder on key leadership hires. As an active member of the startup community through New York Angels, Allen has invested in early-stage companies across consumer, healthcare, and SaaS sectors. When not driving business success, he enjoys traveling, hiking, photography, collecting art, and cycling. Allen, welcome, and what is your favorite quote or saying, sir?
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and excited to chat with you guys. One of my favorite quotes is from Keith Richards in a documentary years ago. He had a book, he had just come out with this book, and they're talking about how the Rolling Stones' first manager had them sign over their rights to all their songs, right? So all the 60s Stone songs are owned by Alan Klein or ABKCO, right? Who also managed the Beatles. He took advantage of inexperienced and unknowledgeable youth ready to make a deal. But, when they asked Keith Richards about it, and they're like, are you upset about that? Do you hold any kind of grudge or ill will? And I love what he said, which was, it was the price of an education. He was quoting Ben Franklin, or Ben Franklin gets the credit for a lot of quotes. What I think is super powerful about that is throughout life, we're always making mistakes. We're always maybe made the wrong choice, did the wrong thing. I could have done that better, what have you. We manifest regret because we feel like we screwed up. However, if you got something out of that, which most, if not all of the time you do, then you received something. You got an education, you learned something from that experience. So instead of feeling I really screwed that up, you can say, I paid that price. That was the price I paid. I think that's an incredible nugget of wisdom to have with you throughout life.
A business tagline, what's that all about?
Sure. Fueling startup success through high impact talent. That's what A-List is all about. A-List Search, my boutique search firm that I founded over 2 decades ago. That's what I'm all about. As an entrepreneur myself, from the early days, I always had a knack for entrepreneurship and have experienced it from all angles.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So whether it was little entrepreneurial ventures when I was young, having my own newspaper out, or little things I did to make money, to the journey from Wall Street to starting my own recruiting firm, I've always had a passion for helping startups grow. It's something I love about working with startups, whether it's from a recruiting perspective, angel investing, or advisory, sometimes all three. I find that really exciting. And when it's high impact talent, that's what it's all about. The success, startups succeed or fail, purely, mostly with the talent. Without the right people, you're not going to get off the ground and grow.
It's interesting you mentioned investing, and that in part of your bio has you working as an intern at age 15 on Wall Street. Is that tied back to that? Yeah. Is 15 a legal age to work on Wall Street?
Actually, no. I had to get permission. So the story there is in junior high school, I had the opportunity to skip a grade. I had this special 2-year SP program for kids with certain grades, you had the opportunity to do that. And I did it. And at the time, I thought it was a cool thing to do. I get to go to these special classes. I'm jumping ahead. In retrospect, I wouldn't have done it because I cut out a year of, I got into the adult world a year sooner. They have actually done away with that program. But because of that, I was a year ahead and everyone else was of legal age. I had to get permission from my parents. I was in this program called the Academy of Finance. It's a great program in John Dewey High School in Brooklyn. It was a special thing. You got to learn all about Wall Street. We played this stock market game where you fictitiously traded stocks with a portfolio in a certain amount. And literally you had 30 schools across this city, all 5 boroughs that were part of this program and competed. And then part of it, you got an internship on Wall Street. So my team won the stock market game, which is great. We got to tour the exchange. So I got to see that at 15 and see all the craziness. And then I got an internship on Wall Street. I will say I loved it. It was a lot of fun. I was taking the train from Coney Island, where I grew up, into the city and to Wall Street every morning. And it was fascinating. It was a great learning experience. But part of that learning experience, it was traveling into the city every day, doing that rush hour commute, seeing the other people getting out of the subway and just walking to work, just not the most joyful vibe. Watching the clock sometimes, while many aspects were interesting, I learned a lot, but I realized, you know what? I don't want to do this. And that's powerful too. On this journey of life, I always tell people, ask me for career advice. Most people change vocations 7 times in their lifetime, right? Not jobs, vocations. So you're doing one thing and then you're doing something else. I was on Wall Street and then I'm DJing, 2 totally different things. So knowing what you don't want to do can be just as powerful as knowing what you think you want to do. So that set me on a very different path at that point.
Something that strikes me is the thread that weaves between DJing and promoting clubs and then being a recruiter. It almost is like a Tom Cruise movie. Were they different journeys? What's the connection between DJing and finding recruits?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Sometimes getting from A to D is not a straight line. And there's just different experiences on the journey that set you into a different path, right? So I thought I was going to conquer Wall Street and be a finance guy. And then I realized, you know what, this isn't my vibe. At the same time, I was getting into different kinds of music, a lot of rock, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin. Hip hop was on the rise and just really passionate about that. And just as a hobby, making mixes. At that point, we used mix tapes. Actually, yeah. So I started doing that with some friends, transitioned from the Wall Street thing. And there's this thing called promoting clubs. I'm like, that sounds like a lot more fun than waking up and sitting on the D train every morning, commuting to Wall Street. So I took a total left turn and got together with a couple of friends. We started a company called the Monkey Business Crew. We worked at all the top clubs in New York. Club was called the Palladium, and MTV had this dance show in downtown. Julie Brown led it. We did the parties for her show where they picked the dancers. That was the first gig we got. Through doing that, we used to hire DJs for our gigs, and I got more into music and making mixes. We also did the same thing at college dorms. We do parties. And at one point I said, why are we hiring DJs? People seem to like the mixes I'm making. I can do this. So I just took the turntables up one of the gigs and never looked back, really. And that kind of, that's actually, as I think of it now and say now, a real pivotal point into DJing. The promoting was one thing and that was cool and fun, but DJing is, I learned a lot from that. There's a lot in there, right? Because you are reading not just a person, but a crowd, right? Your job is to make them move in the right way. And, people with different tastes, seeing a person's style, you can get a sense maybe what kind of music they're into. And when you have different styles, you may be playing different genres that can work together to touch this one in the room or that one. And you just create an energy, build it. I really enjoyed that. The highlight was DJing at a club called the Limelight, which is world famous, renowned club. It was in a church. So they converted a church into a club. There's actually a couple of movies about it. One's called Party Monster with Macaulay Culkin, and the other's a documentary called Limelight. Super interesting, super fun. This was the top club in New York City for a while. At that point, in order to get culture, whether it was fashion or music, what's the latest music and all that. Sure, maybe you listen to the radio, but if you really wanted to tune into what was happening, you had to go out to clubs. You had to leave your apartment. The record labels that were trying to sell the music, and knew that's the epicenter of where you went to project that culture. Through that, I connected with some of the top labels in New York, and that was my introduction to the music business. I didn't know never thought much about it until that point, but that I thought was super interesting. They invited me to some of the label parties, and no, the DJ was fun. DJing was going fun. And actually, interestingly enough, I'll share this. In addition to regular clubs, I was DJing at strip clubs for a while. And I think it's worth mentioning because that's a different dynamic, right? It's a different dynamic. You're not trying to make people dance. You're playing specific music that goes with the scene, the vibe, and what the girls want to hear, makes them feel good and all of that. You're also emceeing, which is interesting. So it's a totally different vibe. But strip club DJs at that point made a lot of money in cash. So it was very different than the club thing. Here you made a lot of money. You were in an environment most of your friends thought was like paradise. And I'm not going to deny it was definitely fun. So that set me on a different path, right? A little nuance there in terms of the DJing. So I enjoyed that and I was making great money. This is coinciding with the time I graduated college. And through a friend, I was able to get a job as an elementary school teacher. Special ed wasn't something I was necessarily looking for, but it gave me a steady paycheck. It gave me benefits. And I do love kids. I really enjoyed it. For a while, I was DJing at the Limelight, Sunday nights, Monday morning. I have to go into school, put on a tie and deal with the kids. Special ed, so behavioral disorders. It was a very dichotic situation. When you're in your 20s, you can do that. And then you learn a lot from teaching kids. The ability to teach was powerful. In college, I also did some TAing or teacher's assistant at some of the big lectures I had. So I've always had a passion for teaching. I think that has transcended through everything they do as well. If you're going to teach something, you really want to understand that subject. If you're going to teach someone else, it's very interesting to make your students feel comfortable, to ask questions and so on. There really is an art to it. So now I'm on this path. I'm making pretty good money. I'm actually making excellent money, not working a lot of nights a week. And I'm like, okay, this is cool for now, but I don't want to blink and wake up 5-10 years for now. And I'm still doing it. It's not the real world. And I knew I couldn't do it for the rest of my life and I had to do something else. So I took the knowledge from the music biz and I started really researching it. Actually, this came out of interesting experience in promoting national acts. So we did a lot of rock clubs and we booked up and coming bands or well-known bands. You'd have to pay a lot of money to book the band, to promote the show, put the tickets up on Ticketmaster. Most of them sold the night of. These were up and coming bands. So these were not sellout situations. Yeah. So we have to put up all of that. And then the band's riders, they have crazy things, remove the yellow M&Ms, whatever it is. Then the night of the show, we had what I like to call the monkey business curse. We had a blizzard. Every big show that we had, so many times we lost our shirts. But what interested me in that situation were the tickets sold on Ticketmaster, right? Because Ticketmaster takes it, so you're going to laugh, but what, $2.50 at that time? Now it's $50-$60, or who knows, just like 20% of the ticket price. But I was enamored with that. I'm like, wow, I want to be this middleman. They had no risk and collected a fee on every transaction. So I wanted to be in that situation. So anyway, learning from the music business, really started studying it and seeing that there was all this information out there in terms of sales and airplay. I set out to create a business platform that would be online for record labels to track their music, the success, the sales, the airplay, how it correlates, marketing, so on and so forth. I would literally be in the booth. I was a computer science major, minor in business, SUNY Albany, go Danes. I was writing software. I got a laptop and I was like writing software, coding this platform while DJing in between songs and all of that. So finally I built this software and I started shopping it around to all the labels. I got some good feedback. I met with a lot of top people, but nobody was buying. I did this for over a year. Sony, which was the top label at the time, they're like, wow, this is really good, but we actually have our own system that we built. So I was actually mothballing it, but in a way, just I put my all into it. It wasn't happening. I was giving up, and then Sony's system crashed, right? So my friend who was there, he calls me up. He's like, you got to get in here with your laptop and show my boss your platform. So I did. And he said, this is great. Can it do this and this? And I said, sure. He's great. Send me a proposal. So I went home. I'm like, oh my God, Sony Music, right? It's what's my software? This is amazing. How much do I ask for? I have no idea. I have no experience in the business world. I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think? How much do you think I asked for or should have asked for?
I think from my perspective, because they're so large, right? I would have done it per song or per album and then geared it that way. Depending on the analytics, I would have broken it out 3 different ways. One would have been for the volume of traffic, high volume, high work. If they had an artist that wasn't taking off yet, they wouldn't get cursed with the monkey curse and go from there. That's my quick rough guess. And I would have talked to someone that's already in the business writing code, that SaaS software, but that's me.
That's good. Wayne, did you want to?
Sure. My answer is always $1 million. Doesn't
Okay.
even matter what the
Anyway.
question is. My answer is $1 million.
I like your thinking, Wayne. Bernie, that was a very thoughtful and precise answer. The software didn't lend itself. It wasn't a thing that could charge per sign. Anyway, Wayne, I think that's a great idea. I didn't shoot that high. I definitely wanted to get the deal. So I asked for 50 grand, and crickets. Then there was silence. I submitted the proposal, nothing. Weeks went by. I called my friend, what's going on? I haven't heard you. He said, I don't know. And then an idea dawned upon me. I said, I work one night a week. At that point, I was making like $1,000 in cash a night. And this is years ago, so it was great. I had the time. I knew what they wanted. I didn't have a deal, but it just dawned on me, why don't I build it anyway? What do I got to lose? I spent a few weeks actually writing the software that he asked for, making the changes, making the mods. Then I called him up and I said, I have your software ready. Would you like to see it? Oh yeah, come on in. Showed it to his VP of video promotions. It's Columbia Records, the top label. We're talking Sony, Michael Jackson, Pearl Jam. And we go through this software. Oh my God, this is great. This is amazing. Can we make it do this and this? I'm like, sure. How much? I'm like, $5,000. The realization was, it didn't matter what I sold this software for. Where was I at that point? I was a strip club DJ. I don't want to say with no future. I had not done anything in the business world. If I have the opportunity to jump to having a business with Sony Music as a client because they paid me $1, it's like the penny gap, if you've ever heard of that. It's like from 0 to 1. It's actualization. So he's great. Send me an invoice for half. I will never forget that day. I got the check from Sony Music and I literally felt like I had a record deal. It was amazing. Then I was able to take the software I wrote for Sony, license it to all the other labels. And then Goldman Sachs came calling. Hey, we need something like that. Built it for Goldman, licensed it to all the brokerage firms. And then there was one morning I would wake up and I would realize that my software is on the desktops of a couple of hundred people in the top finance and music companies in New York City and the world. It was a great feeling. I was like, wow, what an accomplishment. However, I wasn't really making a lot of money. We didn't have the startup infrastructure that we have now. And the model was good, but not great. I was coding and running around, rollerblading to different offices, whether it was Sony or Goldman, to release the software and train people and all of that. So it's definitely a cumbersome project. I always tell my candidates, keep an internal clock. If you feel like you've been talking for a while, give your audience the opportunity to ask questions. Do you want to drill down somewhere? So let me stop there for a second and ask that.
The backstory is amazing. You had me at low. I haven't heard anything about executive recruiting.
Yeah, we're getting there. And that's a great point. The transition into recruiting came with me burning out from doing the software myself, having this great cadre of clients. I like the economics of recruiting. My software is already at all these top companies. So I just told them I was phasing out, but I can place some people on site to take over the software. And they're like, sure. So then I flipped all those clients from software to recruiting. And that's how I launched my search company, A-List Search, 20 years ago. Initially, we did mostly engineering roles, but over the years have evolved to do executive search. 10 years ago, I got into angel investing. That's how I switched into recruiting. So I'm going to stop there and see where you want to go from there.
Well, you know what? You're taking us down a really good path. It's the origin story, right? That's awesome. From teaching, DJing, writing code for some major firms, which always looks good on the CV and on your performance. And I think that gives you a super enriched background of different types of folks. You haven't been inside a factory for 20 years. You've had a lot of different things moving around. When you're recruiting, how do you find that right fit for the person? In other words, buddy comes up or young miss comes up or whoever comes up and says, hi, I'm looking for work. Or someone says, listen, I am looking for talent. How do you make sure that there's a good fit? Can they do it? Is it a good cultural fit? Because sometimes not everybody's going to jive well. How do you make that work?
Great question. Typically, we're not finding people jobs. We are hiring for specific roles that companies have. Initially, we did contingent recruiting and focused on finding the right engineers and whatnot. When it comes to recruiting transformational leaders for high growth startups, it's essential to get the right fit beyond just the words on a resume and a job description. I've developed a 34-point discovery process that we go through with every client at the beginning of a search. A portion of that is about the company. Once we've done that the first time, I have to do it going forward. It digs into the mission, core values, what success in the role means. And specifically, what are the expectations and milestones 3 months, 6 months, 1 year out? What are we trying to achieve? What are the key objectives? So understanding all of that, values and mission matter a lot. The persona of the founders definitely emanates throughout the company. So understanding these things in terms of how they define their culture, right? Culture is not just a foosball table and lunch Fridays. It really is way beyond that. And I think your candidates are more sophisticated than that. They're definitely looking for more than that. I've seen companies really evolve what their culture is. So how do we do that? Once we've downloaded all this information, we develop our ideal candidate profile. Typically for high growth startups, we are looking for candidates that have seen that success before, whether it's 0 to 1, 1 to 10, or 10 to 100. 0 to 1 can mean 0 to 1 million in ARR, but it's also just generally the company is figuring out their product market fit. 1 to 10 can mean 1 to 10 million, but it usually means the company's figured out their product market fit. Now they're in high growth mode. So knowing that, we'll look for candidates that kind of have had that experience and maybe share some of the same pedigree that folks have at that company.
Interesting enough, I want to flip this. Have you ever, because you got a good sense or a good vibe, that you listen to the person tell you what they're looking for, and you just said, no, that isn't what you're looking for. What you're saying you want isn't what you want at all. Have you been able to do that? I'm guessing you have.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. One of our core values is being an advisor, being a true partner. We've seen a lot of startup stories before, whether it's WeWork, meteoric growth, and then all the craziness that happened towards the end. And we've seen what's worked, what doesn't work, what makes sense. So whether it's in the process of interviewing, their interview process, or their hiring strategy as they're building out their team. So we definitely will push back if we see, does this make sense? Or we'll share a story where we maybe saw a similar startup take a path that maybe didn't work out the way they had expected.
Be careful what you ask for.
That's right.
Would it be safe to say then if you had a situation where you went hunting for a candidate and the candidate comes in and things don't work out? Not because you picked wrong or read the situation wrong, it just fell apart. Do you come back 6 months from now and go, so how's it going? Or correlate even on the onset?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great question. And so one thing is managing expectations, and that's a big part of really placing the right candidate, understanding the journey is and what the expectations are of that candidate, and what are you providing them with? What are the resources? And I'm not talking about laptops or whatnot, but just whether it's the matrix of the company and reports, is this a realistic expectation? And we do check in with our clients and our candidates. We do an early 1 month check-in, 3 month, 6 month, and 1 year to see how it's going. So we always do that.
Is that one of the features that distinguishes yourself between a large search firm versus a boutique agency?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of differences between a boutique search firm and a larger firm. Typically, a larger firm will get a search, and then you'll have a junior associate executing the search. May not have that deep level of experience that's needed or expected. They're like a mill doing as many searches as they can, just getting as many deals as they can. When you're dealing with a boutique search firm like A-List, you're getting me. You're getting the founder executing every search, and the years of experience of working with different companies. Having done this for so long, you really develop a certain sense for understanding what the company is looking for, nuance wise in terms of candidates. And then when qualifying the candidates, really getting a sense for, is this person going to be a fit? Are there any flags? We make sure our clients know the good and the bad with anyone we present. It's a high touch service with boutique. We're limited in the amount of searches we can take. And then for us, it's all about building that relationship with the client and a true partnership that they hire us again and again. We're not looking to do one-off searches for every company. Sometimes, of course, we do. It's just one particular search. But we have tons of examples of companies that we've helped grow from seed to Series D, or to exits or acquisitions, through different raises and so on, through talent. And to me, that's super exciting because you really get to be a part of that growth process in the sense of providing that key talent that helps them get to that next level.
What are the mistakes people fall into the most?
With mistakes that I find businesses or early stage startups make, one of them is you just raise a bunch of cash, hiring with not really enough of a plan in terms of what you really need. Also, not a thorough vetting process. Founders tend to be optimistic, right? It's just part of what the DNA requires. And I'm guilty of that too, but still you need to put a process in place. Do I need this role? Do I need this role today? Or is this something we can do in 3 months? We can leverage other things and account for contingencies with business. If we get this big deal, or if we don't, how does that affect what we need as far as a team? And then when it comes to the process, really having a thorough process of vetting candidates, knowing what you want, being coordinated, scorecards. I've definitely found situations where you have multiple co-founders hiring for a C-level role. You'll have situations where they're all expecting different things. We had this one client that had 5 co-founders, and we were hiring a chief people officer for them, helping them with the chief people officer search. And the feedback that we get from candidates was, this is crazy. They're all expecting different things. So that they weren't really communicating with each other. They weren't aligned on what they needed. And that made for a horrible candidate experience. We got the search done, but it was difficult. Those are some of the mistakes I've seen in the hiring process.
When you're going through this process, you've spoken about angel investing. Is that almost like doing that same process, except someone is looking for money and you're looking to put the funds on the right horse, so to speak, making a bet on the person?
Sure.
Do you run through the same analysis going, is the business sound and solid? Is there more to that? Is it the same process, except it's focused outwards as opposed to a client?
Sure. That's a great question. I would say no. It's 2 different things. But the skills of each do support, if that makes sense, the experience of angel investing. And as a member of New York Angel, I learned so much about angel investing. It's just such a great mind share, if you will, just all angel investors in that network. When I'm evaluating startups, you're exit minded. You want your founders to be exit minded. You look out for mission creep. It's very different than when you're recruiting candidates for a particular role. But knowing what I know about angel investing and what I look at, founders, that does help inform me when I'm working with founders on recruiting. And I get it. It helps to understand their mindset is with growth and exit. And also it's very important to be able to communicate that candidates are looking for an exit too.
Is there a story behind for the company to get the right candidate, to find the ideal? In this case, someone's seeking money from you. Obviously, they have to have a pitch, right? And the company has to have a pitch to attract the talent. How do you craft that? How does that take shape?
So that's a great question. I've thought about summarizing all these different aspects of the recruiting process into a book called The Art of Recruiting, because there truly is an art to it, right? How do you reach out to candidates in the right way with the right messaging to catch their attention? And take it one step further, open that email, schedule some time with you. And there really is, we learned and continues to evolve what that hook is. Let's say in the subject, if it's an email, if it's a phone call, having bullet points, what is going to be most interesting to them? What's going to be enticing about this opportunity? Whether it's a mission-driven company that's making the world a better place, salary that's going to be $500,000 a year, or an early stage company that is at that inflection point where they've nailed their MVP. So now they're on the 1 to 10 trip, but they're at seed stage. So that equity can have tremendous impact. That's a story to tell. There's lots of angles that we look to really shine light on as we're promoting a role and reaching out to candidates.
It could be just the size of the clients I talk to, but I'm hearing a lot about fractional CMOs, fractional CFOs, fractional CEOs. Is that just because people can't afford to hire the right guy now, or is it a change in the industry, or is it just I'm not talking to enough big people?
Great question, Wayne. I'm definitely seeing a lot of that as well. Fractional or fraction of a fraction, some of them I've seen, whether marketing, finance, so on. I would say there is a little bit of a direction in that way, but ultimately at a startup, if you're going to sell your company, you're going to exit, you need a full-time CFO, chief people officer, so on. But there's nothing wrong with bridging that gap for a certain period of time with a fractional when it makes business sense. At some point, you're going to need to convert to a full-time hire.
Are there some top tips you want to give to entrepreneurs to build up their high performance teams?
Absolutely. Let's talk about founders, entrepreneurs, founders. When building out the high performance team, depends what stage you are, right? Early stage, you're scrappy, or seed or pre-seed. Maybe you raise a little family and friends money. And most of the time, it might not be affordable to work with a recruiter. So you have to get scrappy and go on whatever different angel list sites and to find there's a famous quote, Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, said, starting a startup, being an entrepreneur is like jumping off a cliff and building the plane at the same time. So you need to find your co-pilots and really great ones at that super early stage. Once you've raised a little bit of money, having the right mindset depends upon the hire. You're always often entrepreneurs and founders will go out to their network, their angel network, their investors, and so on. That can work, but when it's mission critical roles, I definitely think partnering with the right search firm is everything. There's two different kinds of search. It's contingent and retained, right? Contingent is, that company gets paid. So they're really doing volume and they're working with a bunch of clients and they're not giving your role the attention. When you're partnering with a retained search firm that is totally invested in your search. It's just a different experience. Finding the right recruiter, knowing when, as the founder of the company, you shouldn't be spending all of your time recruiting your team, and hiring a professional to do it is key. And knowing the right ones to go to.
What areas do you like to work in geographically or industry more than others?
That's a great question. We have a number of areas of focus. Some of them are fintech, prop tech, D2C, B2B. So I enjoy working in those areas. We also work with a lot of companies doing social good, whether it's for the environment, helping the homeless, as in the case with Bombas, or fighting racism in the case of Jay-Z and Tidal. We've gotten to work with companies with great missions, and that's always exciting. So yeah, it varies. Those are some of the industries that we focused on and I like working with.
And if somebody says, I need that help, how do they get a hold of you?
That's a great question. There's my email address, Allen, ALLEN, at alistsearch.com. I'm on LinkedIn, of course. Phone number is 212-699-0754. Those are the best ways.
You know what? Alan, thank you. I want to say thank you to Allen Ackerman, my co-host Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. If you're out looking for the right talent, want to know more about that space, reach out to Alan. He's got the expertise, and maybe he can put something on the platter. That's a really old reference to DJing, but I don't know if they use platters anymore other than to just make the sound go back and forth as a tool.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KATIVINERGH.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Streaker from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motive 8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer, please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.